Okay, so let's see how we can go and create the package. I called it Laravel Tinker Server because it's kind of a mix between the Laravel dump server and the PHP Artisan Tinker shell. So I thought that might be a good name. What I've done so far is I have used the Laravel package boilerplate website to create a boilerplate code. This is the code. And then I did a composer install, so not much more. Now, the way I think this package might work is I have created a tool called Nova Tinker tool for Laravel Nova, which behaves a bit in the way that we want it to, so that we can programmatically call the Psy shell and output the Psy shell dumps. So we will probably make use of some things in there. And for the whole input-output, I did something for Botman as well. So what I want to use there is from React PHP. It's called React PHP stdio. So this is basically just an asynchronous standard in, standard out library that we can use to get user input and prompt out the things from the Psy shell. And then in combination with this, I think what we would need to use as well is the React PHP socket library so that we can create a new socket server. And on each incoming connection, we would do things to dump the information. So I think these are basically the three parts that we need. And of course, the Psy shell, but this is somewhere in here. Okay, so to be honest, I have no real idea how to do this test-driven because I've never used React PHP in a test-driven way. And I don't want this video to end up being hours of content with me just looking at documentation. So to speed things up a little bit, what I will do is I will try to create the package and then we will see how we can write tests for this at the end. So with our custom package boilerplate in place, the next thing I would like to do, because testing this especially with a socket server, is going to require us to manually run the command that we will have in here. So I'm going to create a new Laravel app where we use our current package. So let's just do Laravel new Laravel Tinker server test. Then let's go into Laravel Tinker server test, and in here added the composer JSON so that we can use our package. We are going to require beyond code Laravel Tinker server dev master, and the repository is going to be a path repository with the URL being one directory of Laravel Tinker server. Okay, and then we can do a composer update. Okay, and we got it symlinked and it got discovered. Nice. So I think then we can close our Laravel test application because the rest will happen inside of our package. Okay, so the boilerplate has a lot of things that we do not need in our package. We don't need routes or migrations or views. So we will need some kind of configuration file. I'll leave this in here, and we will need a command. So the first thing that I would like to do is create a new command, and this command would then be used to start the actual server. So let's go in here, create a new console directory, And let's create a class called tinkerserver command. And this extends the Laravel command. Okay. Then we need the signature and a handle method. So the signature is going to be, let's just stick with tinkerserver for now. And then handle, oh no, not the underscores, handle. So this will be the method that will do the magic. All right, so now we should be able to do this in our example application, PHP Artisan. No, of course not. We haven't registered the command yet. So in the service provider, here we have this commands, and then we use tinkerserver command class to register the command. And now, oh, there's a wrong namespace. It's with a capital C. Oh, and now the import still has the wrong namespace. This, okay, cool. So now our command is registered in our package and the application can actually go and use it. Cool. So before we start actually doing any of this socket connection things, I would like to get the whole PsyShell thing working in the first place. So what we need to do is our package needs to require some dependencies. So we are going to need PsyShell, and we're going to need the standard out, standard in React library. So if we take a look, React PHP, composer require, we can do this. In our package. And the next thing we would need to do is we would require PsyShell as well. Let's see. Here's PsyShell. And this is the package name, and then we can just do a composer require of the package as well. All right, so now we have the dependencies in our package to make use of those libraries. So the standard in, standard out thing is really useful. And let's see, there was a really easy example in here. So let's just copy the example into our command. So let's import stdio. Okay. And let's import this class as well. So we will create the event loop. The event loop is required for all of the React PHP libraries, which just takes care of keeping the process running. Then we create the new stdio. We set a prompt. This could be something like this. And then whenever we receive data, we want to execute PsyShell in here, and then somehow display the output. We don't need this. And then we run the loop. So if we try this now, we can just echo. Let me open the demo application in a new tab. Laravel Tinker Server Test. PHP Artisan Tinker Server. There's an error. What is it? Factory not found. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, yep. Okay. So what we've done so far is we have required the dependencies inside of our package, but in order to load these dependencies into our actual application that makes use of our package, we have to do a composer update in here as well. Okay, as you can see now, those new dependencies that we added to our package are now available inside of the Laravel application. Okay, so Tinker Server, now we got the prompt. And now when we write anything and press enter, we perform this your input call in here. Okay, so whenever we press enter, we can now perform some kind of logic and use this in combination with PsyShell. Okay, perfect. Now let's see how we can do the PsyShell part. Let's head over to the Nova Tinker package. And there we have this. So no, that's the Tinker tool. It happens inside of the Tinker controller. Yeah, here it is. So we have this config, then we have some casters which are being used to cast specific collections to like valid Tinker output and the model as well, things like that. So we will need this as well. Then for Tinker, I'm using buffered output. I create a new PsyShell and set the output that I want to use. And yeah, then I'm adding input. In this case, it comes from the request. And then we create this new execution loop closure, trigger it, and output the execution loop output. Okay. So we need to do most of these things as well. So let's copy this over. We're going to clean this up all later. I just, right at this point when I'm working on packages, especially these kinds of packages, I tend to create some more working proof of concepts and then clean up the code to make it look as good as possible. But right now it's more about seeing how all of this fits together. And then from there, we'll see how we can advance. So we would have something like a function get shell or get PsyShell. This would create the PsyShell configuration. Let's import this. We don't want an update check. Then we have these casters. Let's import them as well. Let's just use this. Those are just strings, nothing that we need to import. Okay. And now with the config, we can... First, we need to create a buffered output. Then we can create the shell, which is going to be a new PsyShell with the config that we have here. Some space. And we're going to set the output as well so that we can use the buffered output and pull out the information from there. So this means in order to access the output, this needs to be somewhere in here. So this output, and then we're going to return the shell in here. And in here, I'm just going to say this shell output equals to a new buffered output. And then we have a protected shell output, which is going to be the buffered output. So let's add this as a var buffered output. Okay, and then since we now renamed this, let's use shell output in here as well. All right, so now we have the method that was going to create a Psi shell, and we return it. So we can use it in here, I think, by doing something like shell equals to this create Psi shell. Then in our event loop, we want to use the Psi shell like this. And in here, we are going to create this closure. So closure is going to be new execution loop, like this, I guess. And then I'm going to run it, I think. Let's take a look at the package again. What did we do here? Oh, we had the execution loop closure, which received the shell, and then we performed execute on this. So execution loop closure. Let's see. Execution loop closure receives the shell. Then we perform execute. Okay, but we still have to tell Psi shell about the code that we're running here, which is this line. So we have something like how did I do it here? Add input and then shell, add inputs, and then it would be the line. Okay. Then we would execute it, and the output would be this shell output fetch. Like this, I guess. Let's give it a try. Okay, our process got killed, but we received the output. Okay, let's see what is going to happen in here. Let's take a look at the execution loop closure. So we have this set closure method where we extract the scope variables. This is good. This is what we want. Then we have a try catch. We have an output buffer end flush, and we have this while true. Okay, so this is not really what we want. We don't want this to be in a loop itself because we already have the loop from React PHP. But it's extending the execution closure. Which is also doing not exactly what we want. Okay. Let's see what happens if we just use the execution closure and run this without the loop. Okay. Array filter, the code buffer. Okay. I think there's also a add code method. So we could try adding the line as this input of code.